Ladies and gentlemen, it is an ancient and often repeated truth that the mind is a battleground. For we are to speak of the mind in any serious way, we must first acknowledge that it is not a mere organ or tool of reason. No, the mind is the very seat of our desires, our fears, our beliefs, and our hope. It is the compass by which we navigate the world, whether we do so with wisdom or folly. Kindness or cruelty is often determined by what we allow to take root within it. But herein lies the question: how, in a world so filled with distraction and despair, does one renew the mind? How does one escape the constant bombardment of trivialities and noisy thoughts to reclaim the clarity and virtue that so often seem just beyond our grasp? I believe, my friends, the answer is simple but not easy. It is, in fact, a secret as old as humanity itself. The mind must be filled with truth. But the truth, not as we often wish it to be, but as it is. The renewal of the mind is not some mechanical trick we perform upon ourselves, not some fleeting moment of inspiration that carries us for a few days, but a daily act of intentional focus, of devotion to truth itself. You see, our minds, like the gardens of old, will grow wild and untamed unless we tend them. They will take root in the soil of fear, anger, envy, or pride if left to themselves. The way to renew the mind, then, is to plant seeds of higher thoughts, of virtues which are rooted not in our own fleeting inclinations, but in something far more enduring: truth, goodness, and beauty. It is not an overnight process, no more than a gardener can expect to plant a seed and find a mighty oak the next morning. But what is this truth we must turn to? This is where I would caution us. We live in a time that offers many truths, many of them competing for our attention. The world will tell you that truth is relative, that it is whatever you choose to believe, that it is a social construct born of necessity. But I would argue that such ideas are more like weeds, springing up in the fertile soil of a mind that has neglected its proper cultivation. True renewal begins with a return to an eternal truth, one that transcends time and human opinion. For me, that truth is found not in the fleeting notions of men, but in the eternal word, the Logos, which sustains the universe itself. That truth calls us to live beyond ourselves, to reach for a reality that cannot be seen with the eye, but can be known by the heart. The mind is not a passive vessel, but an active space constantly influenced by external and internal forces. Left to its own devices, the mind will naturally follow patterns of thought that are often rooted in immediate desires, fears, or distractions. This is why the renewal of the mind is not just a nice idea, but a necessary and intentional practice for anyone seeking deeper understanding or personal growth. It is a discipline that demands effort, consistency, and a willingness to question one's own assumptions. The concept of intentional renewal may seem abstract, but it becomes clear when we consider the way the mind operates. Much like a garden that can become overrun with weeds if not carefully tended, the mind too will grow wild if we allow it to be influenced by the trivialities of life. Our minds are constantly receiving information, processing thoughts, and forming beliefs. The process of renewing the mind begins with recognizing that not all of these thoughts or beliefs are beneficial. Some are merely habitual or born of societal influence, while others may be distorted by emotions or past experiences. These unchecked thoughts can take root, shaping our worldview in ways we might not even realize. To intentionally renew the mind, one must begin by identifying what has taken hold of it. Are we driven by anxiety, fear, or bitterness? Do we hold on to resentments or past failures that cloud our judgment? Or do we tend to gravitate toward shallow, fleeting thoughts that satisfy momentarily but leave us spiritually empty? The mind will naturally take the path of least resistance, following the easy thoughts that do not require effort to sustain. But as anyone who has worked to transform a habit knows, true change demands intentionality. The renewal of the mind is a process that requires not just momentary effort but consistent attention over time. Intentional renewal starts with a deliberate decision to change the focus of one's thought. This means choosing to direct the mind toward things that build character, deepen understanding, and foster empathy and compassion. It involves filling the mind with ideas that are true, noble, and virtuous. This isn't about escaping the reality of the world, but rather about training the mind to engage with it in a more constructive and thoughtful way. It requires choosing, for instance, to read literature that uplifts and educates, rather than consuming mindless distraction. What it means prioritizing reflection and introspection over the constant noise of modern life. By doing so, we train our minds to consider higher things, allowing us to rise above the impulses that often dictate our behavior. The renewal of the mind also involves a shift in perspective. It's not just about thinking differently, but thinking in a way that aligns with deeper truths about life and existence. For many, this truth is rooted in spiritual or philosophical teachings that go beyond personal experience. In today's world, we are often encouraged to view truth as something subjective and individual construct that is shaped by personal experiences, cultural backgrounds, and societal influences. This notion, commonly referred to as relativism, suggests that truth is not absolute but flexible, adapting to the needs and perspectives of the individual. While this approach may seem appealing in a society that values personal freedom and diverse viewpoints, it ultimately falls short when we consider the deeper implications of truth. True renewal of the mind requires us to understand that there is, in fact, a truth that transcends personal opinion, one that exists independently of our individual preferences or perspective. At its core, the idea that truth transcends personal opinion speaks to the universality of certain principles. For example, moral truths such as the inherent dignity of every human being, or the importance of honesty, are not negotiable based on one's personal feelings or the cultural environment in which one lives. While individual experiences might shape the way we understand these truths, the truths themselves remain constant. They exist outside the confines of our subjective views and provide a foundation on which society can build its moral and ethical system. A truth that is truly universal is not altered by individual whims, nor does it bend to the pressures of societal norms. Furthermore, if truth were entirely subjective, it would lead to a kind of moral and intellectual chaos. If everyone's truth were equal, regardless of the evidence or reasoning behind it, there would be no way to distinguish between what is right and wrong, or between what is grounded in reality and what is based on delusion. Such a world would be one in which every opinion holds equal weight, leading to confusion and conflict, rather than understanding. We see this in situations where personal beliefs clash, without a shared basis for discussion. The erosion of an objective standard of truth leads not to freedom, but to division, as each person operates for indifferent and equally valid truth. This is where the renewal of the mind becomes crucial. It is not enough for the mind to simply adopt a set of opinions that feel right or convenient in the moment. True intellectual and moral growth demands that we strive for something greater, something beyond our limited perception. This pursuit is not an exercise in rejecting personal experience, but in aligning those experiences with universal truths that hold firm regardless of the opinions of the moment. When we seek out this kind of truth, we are not simply looking for what we want to hear, but for what is fundamentally real, even if it challenges us or calls us to account. Consider the example of scientific discovery. So whether we understand them or not, whether we accept them or not, they govern the natural world with an unyielding consistency. In the same way, moral and ethical truths operate outside the sphere of personal preference. They do not change because of the passing whims of the day or the transient trends of culture. The truth that transcends personal opinion is the kind of truth that holds firm across time and place. It is objective, constant, and unshakable, even in the face of personal doubt or societal pressure. Moreover, truth that transcends personal opinion leads to greater freedom, not less. It is a truth that frees us from the tyranny of our own biases and the limitations of our subjective understanding. When we seek truth beyond the boundaries of personal opinion, we open ourselves up to a greater understanding of the world around us and our place within it. It allows us to engage with others in meaningful ways, even if their opinions differ from our own, because we are all striving towards something that is independent of our personal views. This collective pursuit of truth creates unity, not division. In conclusion, the renewal of the mind is not a fleeting or superficial process. It is a profound, ongoing transformation that requires intentionality, spiritual depth, and a commitment to truth that transcends personal opinion. To renew the mind, we must cultivate it with wisdom, focusing on principles that endure and align with a higher purpose. This journey is not one of instant change, but a lifelong pursuit of growth, reflection, and refinement. As we embark on this process, we are not only shaping our thoughts, but ultimately becoming the people we are meant to be, people whose minds and hearts are open to the deeper truths of life. May we then embrace this path of renewal, knowing that it leads to a more purposeful and meaningful existence, grounded in truth, guided by wisdom, and sustained by the spiritual strength that accompanies lifelong transformation.